having met the person that I knew I wanted to marry, and having decided where I wanted to get married, which was a small, tiny church on a beach in Naxos, the only way I could go about it was to get christened first. So this is the extract. There was nothing for it but to be christened. We lived at the time in a very posh suburb of Athens, where most of the embassies had their residences. It seemed safe to assume that the priest would therefore be fairly understanding towards foreigners wanting to marry Greeks, and would be helpful. Not a chance. I was told very sternly that if I wished to become Greek Orthodox as an adult, I would need to attend 6 months of lessons. This was a slight problem, as the wedding was 4 months off. Pepe's father saved us. He had a chat with a local priest in his area who agreed to waive the 6-month rule in return for a small contribution to the church. This was much more like it, I thought. I had visions of waltzing in to see the priest in some small, run-down old church, handing over my donation and signing a bit of paper. I began to get nervous when it appeared that several members of Pepe's family would need to be at the baptism. This puzzled me, as I was thinking in terms of a 5-minute transaction with a priest. But no, I needed a godfather. That's fair, I thought. Maybe they needed the godfather's signature and some papers. It made sense. Then I learned that Pepe's parents would be there. This was stretching it a bit, but then again, if they wanted to witness this small scene as a build-up to the marriage of their only daughter, I could hardly complain. Next, Pepe told me that my best man should be present. Now this did seem a bit much, but by now I was resigned to it all being one of those strange Greek practices, and stopped worrying about it. I wish I had done the 6 months of lessons. I would have done 6 years. On the fateful day, I arrived at the in-laws' house in a smart shirt and the money in my pocket. Most of Pepe's immediate family were there. Aunties, cousins, the lot. Plainly, this was going to be a bit more of a ceremony than I thought. I wasn't unduly worried. Years of performing on stage meant that I didn't mind being the focus of attention. We left the house as a group and walked round the corner to the church. "You are joking, Pepe," I said with mounting dread. I had presumed that Pepe's dad had found a small, unassuming local church. But oh no, we were heading for the church. Not just the biggest church in the neighbourhood, not just the biggest church in Athens, not just the biggest church in Greece. This was actually the biggest church in the whole of the Balkans. I was beginning to understand why Pepe had been a bit vague about the details. There was no turning back now, so in we strode. I had a moment of hope when the priest ushered me into a small office. Maybe it was just going to be a formality after all, I thought. Not exactly. He was asking me if I had remembered to bring a pair of swimming trunks and a towel. Pepe sheepishly admitted that yes, we did have the items, as I looked at her in horror. "What's going on?" I hissed at her. "Just do what the priest says," she hissed back. It has been 8 years now, and I still cringe when I think about it. I may have skipped the lessons, but we were going to do the full Orthodox christening service, down to the letter. It started quite well. I stood with my godfather, Pepe's brother Adonis, in front of the altar while the priest chanted and read from a book. It felt a bit like a gay wedding, but it wasn't bad, and Pepe's brother is a handsome bloke. It was about to get much, much worse. The priest ushered me into a side chamber and told me to change into the swimming trunks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I checked with him several times, but he just told me to hurry up. As I stripped off and put them on, I consoled myself with the fact that at least this part of the service appeared to be private. It was just Adonis, the priest, and me. I was wrong again. The priest then told me to follow him. We were heading for the glorious central nave of the church, the biggest in the Balkans. I was standing in the middle of it, in front of half of Pepe's family, wearing nothing but my bathers. Some of Pepe's younger cousins were beginning to giggle. They were being half-heartedly shushed by the older ones. I had been to many christenings in Greece, and knew the next stage. I was pretty confident at least of escaping this humility. The baby is held by the priest and dipped into a bowl of water while it is anointed with olive oil. I was pretty damn sure there was no way this 70-year-old priest was going to lift up my 14 stones and fit me into any bowl. But then I hadn't been to an adult christening before, had I? Standing to one side of us was a magnificent object, which I had first taken as a church ornamentation. It was a giant copper urn standing a good 6 feet tall, with ornate religious inscriptions covering its sides. The priest gestured to me, and gestured to the urn. I looked at Peppy for help, but she was desperately trying to support one of her cousins, who was silently giggling so badly she couldn't stand up. There was nothing for it. All my dignity had left me a long time before, so with the feeling of a condemned man, I walked slowly to the urn and climbed in. At least the water was warm. I began to consider staying in there until everyone, including the priest, had given up and gone home. I could wait in it until it got dark and then slink off. It didn't matter if I wasn't christened. It didn't even matter if I got married or not. It wasn't like I was ever going to speak to Peppy again, and I certainly wouldn't be able to look any of her bloody relatives in the eye for many years to come. In fact, I almost did stay in there forever. I had forgotten the anointment with olive oil. Just as I was beginning to feel comfortable, the priest tipped a gallon of the stuff on my head, as if chiding me for beginning to enjoy any part of the process. This was the cue to get out and reveal myself to the world in all my sodden, glistening glory. Except that I couldn't. Back then I was still quite fit and strong, and could easily haul my body up with my arms. But you try holding on to the side of a copper urn when everything is covered in a mixture of oil and water. I was like a spider stuck in the bath. Every time I slithered up a few inches, I slipped back down again. The priest was beginning to look concerned. Eventually, with every shred of dignity washed away along with many sins, I managed to release myself and was handed a towel for my efforts. Surely, I thought, it can't get worse. I was mistaken. I was told later that for the congregation, the grand finale was the funniest bit of all. I was mercifully allowed to keep the towel, but now had to hold hands with Adonis. We then started a procession. The priest led, holding his Bible in front of him and chanting gravely. Next came a very serious Adonis, looking splendid in his smart suit. Holding onto his hand was me, probably most resembling something that had just drowned in an olive oil vat. I was holding on to him for dear life because I was barefoot and the marble floor was slippery as hell with the oil still dripping off me. My hair was plastered to my face and I could hardly see. Our little procession had to make a very solemn circuit of the offending urn, not just once, but 3 times. Enough to guarantee that there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even my lying, deceiving so-called fiancé was doubled up with laughter.
May I say?
Yes.
I mean, what an adventure. Do you have any photos from that?
No way.
Very particular
Photos are
day?
definitely banned.
Well, thank you so much for reading to us from your
My
book.
pleasure.
It's Blue Skies and Black Olives. Where can people find it?
You can either get it online at any, Amazon or any of the other places, or I think it is on sale here in Athens, in some of the big bookstores.
Like Eleftheroudakis
Yeah.
or Ianos?
This is the hardback. The paperback will be coming out in about 2 months' time.
Let's have a look at that.
So we'll be able to do the...
Very inviting. Wonderful. Let's have a little music break. You're listening to Athens for Real on Athens International Radio. Thank you to Chris Humphrys for reading to us from the book Blue Skies and Black Olives. Let's have a little music break and we'll be right back.